Hey there, Year 9 students. I want to be frank and honest with everybody. This will be the third revision of the video that I created because I kind of want to make it perfect or perhaps at least good enough for you to understand what is user interface when you use different operating systems on your devices. Now, user interface is very simple. In IGCSE, they want you to know four different user interface. The first one is the command line interface, and it's an interface that allows you to, as a user, to write commands in a terminal or console window to interact with an operating system. And the most popular one is currently the graphical user interface. The computers that you're using currently in the computer lab or even the mobile phones that you have are using with GUI, which is graphical user interface, which is a visual system that lets you interact with your computers or smartphone without needing to type in complex commands. The third user interface will be the dialogue-based user interface. It generally uses human voice to give commands to the computer system. The examples are Amazon Alexa and Google Now, Apple Siri, Microsoft Cortana. And the last interface will be a gesture-based interfaces that relies on your human interaction by moving your hands, head, or even your feet. And sometimes it uses some kind of techniques known as computer vision or image processing, like the latest Apple Vision Pro, for example. Now, before we go into the nitty-gritty of the interfaces, let us understand a little bit more about command line interface. Command line interface is an older style operating system where users just only type in the commands using the keyboard. And command line interface, as you know, it does not use any of the images, icons, and graphics. And what you can see on the computer screens are probably black screen or green screen. And because there are no graphics, they require very little computer power. But you can put in hundreds, perhaps 270 different commands into the command prompt of a command line interface. But one thing that you need to know when using a command line interface computer, they have to be entered precisely. And you need to make sure your commands are without any mistakes so that your operator system will not return any errors of it. Now, this is an example of how a command line interface looks like when I want to know what is the IP configuration of our surgeon of our school's IP address. Now, advantages the advantages of CLI will be the user is in direct communication with the computer. The user, like yourself, is not restricted to a number of predetermined options that is in front of your screen. So long as you remember the commands, it is possible to alter your computer configuration settings. Now, the downside of CLIs, of course, you need to remember a lot of commands. I don't know any of you remember any commands that you need at all, but in CLI, all commands need to be typed in so that you may need to take time to learn it and so that you make sure you are not making any error-prone mistakes. And each command must be typed in correctly. It's more difficult to edit once the command is entered because you have to retype it all over again. In graphical user interface, GUI are visual interface that are popular. It's way more popular than using CLI because who wants to have a device that is enabled? It only enables you to type with words command. So these graphics will need more computer power. Instead of typing in commands, a user can use their mouse to point and click objects on the screen, making it more interactive. And the main features of GUI or graphical user interface are windows, icons, menu, and pointers, which is right over here. Now, Windows is generally very simple. Windows are like this, are one of the features that a GUI operating system that you currently use, you can divide the programs into separate screens or separate areas for you to work on. And this can be your folders, applications, videos, or even web pages for you to use. At the same time, on graphical user interface, there are a lot of icons to represent all your files, commands, windows, or the favorite applications that you'd like to use. Furthermore, menus in graphical interface, whether Windows or Mac, are normally used with pop-up or drop-down menu so that it does not cram with too many commands in front of the screen and you'll be able to find it whenever you need them. Finally, pointers are the essential part of operating system of graphical user interface because they literally look like arrows that enables you to select icons or even menus that you would use in your devices, and it's generally used to activate what you want to use in your devices. Now, the advantages of GUI is that every user doesn't have to learn any commands to use a device. It's definitely more user-friendly, and the user-supporting devices will be much more simpler than typing a command. However, the more graphics it is, the more computer memory is required in CLI, and then the user will be limited to whatever they see on the screen, and then they will need an operating system to operate, like Windows, Linux, or Macintosh. Now, who would use GUI? People like you and me who doesn't have great knowledge of how a computer works. I don't really know all the commands of a CLI, so I would definitely be a person who loves to use a GUI rather than a CLI computer. Now, what about dialogue-based user interface that you learned just now? Advantages of using dialogue-based interface will be people who needs to drive. There's no need for a driver to take your hands off the steering wheel, and I can just say, "Hey Siri, play some music," or "Hey Google, show me the direction of a certain place." All right. In a home where as well there are people with disability challenges, they would be useful for using a dialogue-based interface to make sure some of the features of their home are activated. And what about the disadvantages of dialogue-based interface? It can be very unreliable because there are so many background noises, and we have to keep repeating the commands so that the computer can hear us clearly. And at times, it can be quite complex to set up, and user doesn't. We need to know what commands to be set. Not everybody knows the commands with a dialogue-based interface as well. Now, moving into gesture-based interfaces. Now, if you have seen like Apple Vision Pro or some cars have visual sensors that enables you to open up a certain feature or rotating a certain gesture with a finger or thumb, those are generally gesture-based interfaces. Now, although they exist right now, the advantages of gesture-based interface replaces some mechanical input devices, so you don't have to purchase some kind of a controller to do control. The sensor will just sense your hands, your feet, and you don't need to have any physical contact at all with the devices. It's very natural for anyone who just give a gesture base, and perhaps you don't need a training to interact with a computer. For example, opening the back boot of your car. But the disadvantages of using gesture-based interface is that you can have unintentional movement, and then the sensor pick it up, and it works not as what you want it to be. And sometimes it may only accept a limited number of movements, and you have to keep repeating and repeating and ask what's going on with the gesture-based interface, and it's not really that effective. All right, that's about it for user interface. I hope this third revision of the video will be much more clear and understandable for everybody. Bye.